The heart of every man craves a great adventure, but life doesn't usually feel that way. Jesus speaks of narrow gates and wide roads, but the masculine journey is filled with many twists and turns. So how do we keep from losing heart while trying to find the good way when life feels more like a losing battle than something worth dying for? Grab your gear and come on a quest with your band of brothers who will serve as the guides in what we call the masculine journey. The masculine journey starts here now.
We are so grateful that you would join us today on the masculine journey, and I have a feeling you're going to be really glad you did. As we have one of those unique advanced words that at first it seemed a little lame to me when God gave it to me.
Me too, actually.
But I think you're going to be excited when God kind of unveils what all this means. And if you're just tuning in for the first time, we have, since the beginning of the year, done a series on advanced words, with the idea being that, what a neat thing to have a conversational intimacy with Jesus. And, the whole idea of New Year's, resolutions with this type of intimacy gives way to an idea of asking Jesus kind of a theme that he might have for you for the year. So when we do our boot camps, we have these covenant of silence times where we go out there and get alone with God and just begin to listen. Well, we're asking him a specific question come near the end of the year of, what would be the theme for my year this year, Lord? And Dennis, you had a chance to do that. Your word was?
My word was courage, and here we are in March, and every time I turn around, that word's coming back to me in a situation in life. So God obviously gave me the word that he wanted me to hear this year.
And Jim is with us in the studio, and your word was?
Listen.
Listen, and how cool is that? And
it's a hard one.
And then Wayne had the word intimacy, and we spent a couple weeks on that because it's, Sam, you, from what I understand, you waxed it eloquently last week on that word.
I don't know about that, but I shared a little bit from my heart on that word.
Oh, he was waxing.
He was waxing?
Was good.
Well, I wanted to, they let me do it this week, which is my word. And I have for approximately a year been asking God for a word for the day. And that's really cool, and getting a word for the day. But I decided, wow, I not only wanted my word for the day, I wanted something to give me a season for the year. And so long about the beginning of December, I started asking God, what was 2018 about? And what was my word? And it didn't take me long, actually. And I heard, Robbie, the year 2018, I want you to prosper. And I was like, really, God, that word, prosperity gospel, this is not too cool. I mean, really? And he said, Robbie, you're kind of a whiner. He said, work with me here. This word has a kingdom concept to it. And so I started to look at the word through Jeremiah 29, like you were talking about a minute ago, Dennis. Yeah. I was looking at the word in Joshua where he talked about it, several times. And I began to get an understanding in the Hebrew of that word has to do with advancing the kingdom, actually almost laying on a man in dire battle, that kind of prosper. And so when I was thinking about that, I couldn't help but choose this particular clip from the movie Patton. And Patton, he wasn't big on holding territory, but he was seriously big on, advancing.
Now, there's another thing I want you to remember. I don't want to get any messages saying that we are holding our position. We're not holding anything. Let the Hun do that. We are advancing constantly, and we're not interested in holding on to anything except the enemy. We're going to hold on to him by the nose, and we're going to kick him in. We're going to kick out of him all the time, and we're going to go through him like crap through a goose.
There's not much gray area there with Patton, was there? It's pretty black and white.
Now, we happen to have a dear friend with us in the studio tonight, and that is our friend Vinny Menino, and he knew Patton personally, didn't you, Vinny?
Yeah.
and you understood kind of where he was coming from there when it comes to advancing.
I sure do. With me, it came to me in at a very bad time in my life, losing a loved one. And I couldn't figure out what to do about it, and I turned to him, and he put me to work. And the work was the Word of God. And it's the best thing that's ever happened to me, because now I spend almost the whole day. I am blind, like Robbie mentioned. I think he did, but if he didn't, I'm blind. So you use your talents in a different way. The other senses, feel, think, pray. And for me, I started praying.
Now, let's take him back to that time. Actually, I know Vinny well, and so I know that what had happened was he'd lost his wife of over 40 years, the love of his life, really, and
48 years, Robbie.
Yeah, and it was a time of great depression. In fact, the people that, and I knew a lot of the people that Vinny knows, and we've known each other for a long, long time, and he would sit in the church every day and cry until one day, Sister
Carmelita.
Yeah, and tell us what happened.
Well, she come to me and says, I have a job for you. I says, a job? I'm retired. And she turns around to me, no, Vincent, you can do it. What do you want me to do? I want you to build a church. I says, you are Looney Tunes. I thought about it, and I got a few friends, and we started to work on that, to prosper in building a church. And we succeeded.
It's a beautiful church, too. It's in Moxville. What's the name of it?
St. Francis.
St. Francis. Now, Dennis, before the show, you were talking about this sense of prospering. You see, he was in his own kingdom at this point of depression. Look, his loss of freedom. But it's fascinating to me that the way God brought him out, and again, this was the point that Vinny and I became good friends, was him working on God's kingdom literally brought him out of the depression.
Yeah, and I remember talking to a Christian counselor about 20 years ago, and I was kind of going through a period of that. And one of the things he said to me was, and it struck me wrong at first, he said, you've got to take self out of the equation in order to come out of this, because all the words that are self usually lead you down the wrong way. And I'm not saying Vinny was in it necessarily, but we can have a lot of self-pity. We can have a lot of self-focus. And what I hear happen to Vinny is God put someone in his life that came and said, we want you to go do this. And it took him totally out of self and enabled him to focus on advancing the kingdom. In this case, actually starting a church.
And I wish
building a church.
Of course, now Vinny's 87, but when I met Vinny, he was on fire. And I cannot tell you all the programs that he was out there raising money for this and doing this. One of the first times I met him, and he would not leave me alone, was I was the car dealer in Moxville, and he needed a van to take this guy to the hospital. What was it he needed, Vinny?
It was a woman that was blind, and I had set up the whole deal for her to go to New York to get this operation free of charge. Just calling peoples and friends that I knew, and Robbie was kind enough to give me a van. And we sent her. Her name was Louise.
I like the way he says that, kind enough. Here's this guy, that they used to call him the guard father. He's sitting in your office. Robbie, I need a van. You know what I'm saying?
He's a guy you don't really want to say no to.
Well, anyway.
We got to get Sam into the conversation.
Go ahead, Sam.
Sam, what are your thoughts on that?
I just think I'm enjoying listening, honestly, to see what God has in store for me in this particular show. Because prosper is something that I've probably looked at differently over the years, probably than what God had intended it for. So I'm really kind of intrigued to see where God takes us today.
And I don't think he's alone in that.
That was the reason I was struggling with the word. Is I was like, this word is not. But as I began to understand that it was advancing God's kingdom, Jim.
Well, I had the same initial reaction to it as you did. I mean, to me, I hear prosper, and I immediately go to prosperity gospel, name it, claim it, and tell God what you want with enough enthusiasm, and he'll give it to you. And so my initial reaction is negative. And then God has been impressing it on me ever since at levels that, the last one earlier this week, I talked to a lady that's been looking for a full-time job for literally years and hasn't been able to find one, has had all kinds of setbacks, and she went to a church that might get that label, and they said, well, you need to claim it as this is what God has for you. And lo and behold, she got the job. And 2 weeks ago, I would have said, oh, no, wait a minute. God had that lined up for you. It didn't have anything to do with you claiming the prosperity. But maybe it does. I don't know.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that for me, when I began to study this, because, it was my theme for the year, I didn't have... And so I dove on in, and I went to Joshua because there is somebody that's prospering. He's moving into a place where there's giants, and and he's got to advance the kingdom. I mean, this is a difficult situation. What God told him is what he told Dennis. Be strong and very courageous, which I began to see was actually being lashed into God, and that courageous is eager feet, and so being strong and relying on God is an interesting thing as you twist your way in there, right, Dennis?
Absolutely. And it's I've had that same problem, when people would say prosperity, because I was confronted with that years ago, and I just have a bad taste in my mouth about how people say. I can remember hearing fellow Christians say that, God's given me prosperity. I got $5,000 and I was able to go buy this car, and I'm thinking, I'm not really sure that's what he has in mind when he's talking about prospering, that, he's going to get you a new car and this. And I know God blesses us with stuff, but I think the point is, I think we get a little confused sometimes about what God really means when he says prosper.
Whose kingdom is getting advanced. And as I, again, continued to think about this, I started to see that picture of Matthew 11:12, that the kingdom of God is forcefully advancing and forceful men take hold of it. We've got that. We've got a Robin Williams clip coming up.
Oh, boy.
License to Wed. I think you'll get a kick out of that. And we got to hear still from Spock, right? Right, Dennis? Live long and prosper.
That's right.
Register for the boot camp. We got so much more Masculine Journey coming up.
Hi, this is Sam with Masculine Journey. I'm here with my son Eli. We're going to talk about ways that you can help support the ministry. One way, you can go to smile.amazon.com. There's information on our website there on how to do that.
Then you can go to facebook.com, where you can click the donate button, or you can go to masculinejourneyradio.org. Once again, look for the donate button.
Or if you want to mail something in, mail it to P.O. Box 550, Kernersville, North Carolina, 27285.
I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse.
So, guys, what's this I hear about this BOGO continuing for the boot camp?
Well, how could we not continue the BOGO?
Yeah, but Christmas is over. Everyone else has stopped their BOGOs.
Well, it's always the time for giving, Dennis.
It's a Masculine Journey Boot Camp BOGO. Buy one, give one free. $199.
What an amazing thing that would be to give somebody a gift, and what they really end up getting is their heart back.
Coming April 12th through the 15th. Go to masculinejourneyradio.org.
It's one of the greatest investments I know of.
Oh, man, there's a lot of Mick Jaggers in the studio.
Oh, boy. I had a college roommate, my first semester in college, that went out on a ledge at about the fourth floor and did his Mick Jagger imitation. I'm not going to say what kind of condition he was in, but I think about that song. I was asking some folks around earlier this week about, I said, the topic is prosperity. How do we look at things? And I came across that song, and, it's interesting because that song starts out with kind of an angelic choir. I'm sure that Jim remembers that. Yeah. And then he goes in and talks about you can't always get what you want, but if you try, you get what you need. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's kind of how it is with prosperity, because we think about things that we want, but God gives us what we need, and what better gift than eternal life and furthering the kingdom through that. We actually do get what we need.
And it's an interesting thing for me personally to note that at the end of the Patton clip, if you paid attention, they were talking about a goose, and anybody that's ever had geese, they got what they didn't need in their yard, quite often. And interestingly, God had something for you on the whole goose story, right, Jim?
I was walking into church a couple weeks ago, and we have a goose problem. And they're always out front making a mess, and pretty much everybody that works there hates them. Well, I like geese.
Patton went through them.
Yeah, he did. Or something went through them. Anyway. But I was thinking about that, and I actually had an apple core, and I threw it to a couple of them and was thinking, they'd be mad at me for feeding the geese. But God sort of used that in his usual way with humor in me, and he pointed out that, when they're down on the ground, being in the world, and they're squawking, fighting, hissing at each other, pooping everywhere. But then we look at the geese when they're flying in the air together in formation. They're going the same direction. They're working together, and it makes everyone's job easier. And God said, well, you guys are kind of like geese.
And they don't pay much attention to what's going on around them. They just they're on a mission.
They are. And speaking of on mission, you have a Star Trek clip for us.
I do. It just kind of started out, as I said before the show, when you said prosperity, the first thing that came to my mind was live long and prosper. If you ever saw the Star Trek episodes, which are still actually in rerun today, it's kind of hard to believe because that's been so many years ago. I think MeTV and a couple other places still carried them. But I went looking for Spock saying live long and prosper, and then when I listened to this clip a couple of times, God revealed something else to me about prosperity that I don't know if I'd ever really gotten it totally before.
What is your name?
My name is James Tiberius Kirk.
You've always had a hard time finding your place in this world, haven't you? Never knowing your true worth. You can settle for less than ordinary life. Or do you feel like you were meant for something better? Something special?
You will always be a child of two worlds, and fully capable of deciding your own destiny. The question you face is, which path will you choose?
The wait is over. Are you afraid or aren't you? I will not allow you to lecture me. Then why do you stop me?
Prepare to fire all weapons.
I like this ship. This is exciting.
Space is disease and danger, wrapped in darkness and silence.
Buckle up.
Live long and prosper.
There you go.
There you go. And you bring out a wonderful point about that, if we're advancing and we've grabbed hold of his kingdom, and it's forcefully advancing since the times of John the Baptist, according to Matthew 11:12, it takes you someplace, doesn't it, Dennis?
Well, you think it were, how these guys were put together, and they went out on a 5-year mission, if you remember the intro to Star Trek, to explore new life. They went on an adventure, and that's how they advanced the kingdom. They were trying to advance the galaxies. And I thought, when I listened to that, I thought, here, besides the fact that he said Siberius, and I always thought it was James T. Kirk, but they said Siberius at the beginning. But Tiberius, well, that makes more sense. But he put these guys come together, and they go out on an adventure. And that's where they find prosperity, with the adventure. And I'm thinking, with our men's ministry, with the boot camps that we have, with a lot of things that we do, we set out together on an adventure. And it's not always easy, and it does take strength, and it does take courage to do that. And I thought, what a fitting clip to think about being prosperous. So live long and prosper, Robbie.
Yeah, and I, the neat thing is part of this ministry is understanding that there are stages to the masculine journey, and there are stages to this adventure. And again, our old sage over here, Vinny Menino, he took me on many adventures. Back in the day, he was doing races and all these different crazy ideas. I thought at the time, like, you're going to raise how much money and you're going to go do what? And then...
Robbie, I want to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
But it wasn't for what's the word I'm looking for? For my benefit. It was for God's benefit. We are his children. Whatever we do, and we're successful at it, that's God's will. That is why we do it. So I kind of disagree with that it's not about us. Well, then who could it be about? We are his children. So if we do good things, then he gains, he prospers. Imagine if he had everybody doing what us four guys are doing.
Right. And so, I definitely saw that, and I saw the adventures that he was taking you on, and I, have seen this. But there's another aspect to this prosper that I wanted to bring out, and there's a movie called License to Wed, and it has Robin Williams in it. And if I ever do any marital counseling, it will be absolutely required that people before they get married watch this movie, because what happens is that this couple here is posing with each other. They don't really know each other. They're not really communicating. And so Robin Williams takes this on to get these two to actually come out of the mask that they're wearing so that they can be honest, because the kingdom does not advance unless you bring honesty. And so here's an example of where Robin Williams gives them an opportunity to see what that looks like.
Tonight, we learn how to fight fairly.
Sorry. What if we've never had a fight before?
Seriously think I'm gonna puke. Louise, no puking. They're young. They're allowed to be enthusiastic about their love. Never had a fight? It's about time you had one. So please, step up to the top of the circle. Come on, get yours up there. Let's get this perfect relationship on its feet. Put it to the test. Okay. I want you to imagine driving in the mountains. It's nighttime, but there's a torrential downpour. The thing with the wipers. You're tired. You're lost. You're getting cranky. Bang! What was that? Oh, whoa! You got a flat tire because you just hit a pothole. Instant argument potential. What do you do? How do you handle it?
I think we probably just call AAA.
Out of cell phone range. Can't use a cell phone. Can't call AAA. You got to handle it the old-fashioned way. Hands on. You got to change the tire. You're pissed at each other.
Sorry I didn't see that pothole.
It's okay, honey. Accidents happen, so be more careful next time.
Promise. So will.
Okay.
Cut! You guys travel medicated? I mean, that was like Prozac takes a vacation. That's not exactly what we're looking for. Okay. Janine, why don't you and Jimbo show them how this argument should play out?
Sure. Hey, I told you to take Route 45, but again, you didn't listen. Now it's pissing down outside, and we're stuck God only knows where.
Yeah, well, if we hadn't left 3 hours late because someone was talking to her big mother on the phone, then maybe we wouldn't be in this position.
You are a sad, sad man.
You will not emasculate me anymore.
Okay, whoa.
Yeah, you get the picture. However, let me just say that, in my own marriage, learning how to fight fair and learning how to be honest, in other words, to receive the love my wife actually has. I want her to love the real Robbie, not the one that's hiding behind the mask. And sometimes that real Robbie gets really, really angry, and sometimes, and you've experienced that, Dennis.
Time or two. Of course, you've seen it. It's been reciprocated a time or two as well.
But think about what it is that I know when Dennis loves me. He's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. If this guy's been walking, same thing with Vinny and I. We've gone around a couple times, haven't we, Vinny?
Oh, yeah, a couple times.
And so when you've had friends as long as you guys that love you in spite of your huge brokenness, I mean, it's a gift. It's a huge gift, isn't it, Jim?
Yep. Well, I just want to say first that we've never broken up, so I probably have the record for the longest relationship with you, Robbie.
Yeah, that's true.
So
yeah.
There's something going with that.
Well, I'm worried now because, Robbie, I can't remember ever having a fight with you, so maybe we need to quit posing and have it out right here on the air.
Let's go goose to goose.
In marital counseling, and actually in counseling any relationship, if you haven't had a fight, as this kind of pointed out, you're posing, but you never really know somebody unless you live with them, whether that's marriage or you're working 45 hours a week with them. And even then, there's posing going on. But if you're not exposed in the relationship, you don't get the opportunity to go forward. You're just acquaintances.
And it's interesting to me as I sit here now to reflect on inside of prosperity and inside of courage is prosperity. Inside of listening is prosperity. Inside of intimacy, in other words, everybody's word in their own way that we heard, they're all very much connected, right?
Yes,
how could
they are.
How could you have prosperity without intimacy? There would be no such thing. How could you, so it's interesting.
It's the intertwining that you were talking about.
Yes, and by the way, we have a boot camp coming up in April, and we would love to do some advancing in the kingdom with you. It is a battle set in the middle of a great love story.
Absolutely.
And what an opportunity you'd have to advance the kingdom with us. Go to masculinejourneyradio.org and get registered.